the things that we don't talk about is that when a woman goes in through perimenopause and menopause, their risk for eating disorders increases a pretty large amount. Relapse increases. ADHD increases when a woman goes into menopause. And so I noticed that my hunger and fullness cues started normalizing, that my satiety felt balanced again. My brain started working again. And so that's the piece where I feel like in the next few years, this is going to be commonplace conversation.
Welcome to the Suburban Warrior Podcast, the podcast that inspires, educates, and empowers women navigating the chaos of midlife, perimenopause, and menopause. I am your host, Chrissy Pfeiffer, a holistic health coach and fierce advocate for women's wellness. With a background in nursing, the pharmaceutical industry, and integrative nutrition, I blend medical expertise with a holistic approach to help women heal naturally, integrate science-backed therapies, and take control of their health. After enduring my own 10-year battle with perimenopause symptoms, I've made it my mission to ensure that no woman has to suffer in silence. Join me as I share expert insights, real-life stories, and actionable strategies to help women reclaim their vitality, prioritize their well-being, and redefine midlife wellness with grit and grace. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Pfeiffer, and I am back this week with another amazing Suburban Warrior here to share her expertise with us. And guys, this is going to be such a great episode this week. I'm so excited to introduce this topic of GLP-1s into the podcast because there is just so much to talk about. But before we get to my guest, I want to remind you all that if you go to suburbanwarriorpodcast.com, you can check out From Pause to Power Roadmap. It is a free download for you, and it's basically everything you need to know in your perimenopause and menopause journey from A to Z. And it's all the things that I wish I knew when I was going through it about 10 years ago and had really no information or direction. So this is a free download for you guys. Check it out. It's the From Pause to Power Roadmap on suburbanwarriorpodcast.com. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for our free Pause Like a Warrior newsletter. This is basically all the amazing hot tips in the podcast every week sent right into your inbox. So be sure to sign up for that because it's an awesome newsletter. So now I'm really excited to introduce my guest this week. Her name is Jessica Brown, and she is a Stanford-certified compassion teacher, functional medicine clinical nutritionist, and author with over 25 years of experience helping people heal physically and emotionally. With more than 10 years of specialized clinical practice in self-compassion-based reparenting and mindset work, she's guided thousands towards lasting transformation. Jessica is the author of The Loving Diet, which pioneered mind-body approaches for autoimmune conditions and served as visiting faculty at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, where she helped create their mindful eating program. She maintains a thriving practice as a consultant to practitioners and clients nationwide and continues to influence the health community through her innovative approaches to healing. Her work bridges the gap between medical treatment and emotional healing, offering practical tools for those ready to transform their relationship with food, body, and self from the inside out. Welcome to the podcast, Jessica.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Well, I am really excited to have you on. I'm honored to have you on as someone who has, a faculty with IIN, as we call it, Institutes of Integrative Nutrition, which is where I am just finishing up my, year-long certification in integrative nutrition. So I'm so excited about that. And I know today we are going to talk about GLP-1s and everything GLP-1, as well as, your latest book, The Beyond the Shot, which I'm really excited to talk about because it's really what happens after you start GLP-1s and that journey, which I think a lot of people aren't really talking about, right? The conversation is a lot. What is GLP-1s? Are they good? Are they bad? They're great for weight loss. What else are they doing? How are they helping in midlife? Where do they fit in the menopause journey? So there's all of these questions, and we're going to get to them today. So before that, tell us a little bit about you.
So thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
a long-time clinical nutritionist. Also, so I have a clinical practice, But then I went to Stanford and they have a year-long compassion teacher and educator program. And so I completed that. I did a study while I was there as part of my curriculum for self-compassion disordered eating. So this whole topic is very near and dear to my heart because I'm really interested in how GLP-1s are being studied for helping women with disordered eating or binge eating. So I dabble in both the clinical pieces, the emotional pieces of, yes, I was at visiting faculty at IIN, helping them with their mindful eating program. So I'm really
Yeah.
interested in how we're moving forward in the world to get answers because I want answers. So a lot of the work is driven by me going through perimenopause and menopause and how can I live the best life that I can. I want that for all of my clients that I work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I love that you've been doing this like mind body connection for so long, right? Because especially I think in perimenopause and menopause, when we're going through all of these symptoms, everything is looked at in isolation. You know, you have maybe disordered sleep, or you have joint pain, or you have hot flashes. And all of these women are going to all these different doctors for all these different symptoms. And, you know, in actuality, our body works as a whole, right? And we're all, everything is together. And the mind body connection is so huge, so huge. And how we think really drives so much of our actions and our emotions. So, how did you start? You know, I know you were mindful eating and all of that, but when did you start to become curious about GLP-1s and their connection to all of this?
Well, I have identical twin sister. She started
Oh,
on a GLP-1 medication and we just started talking about it.
okay.
And we, because we're identical twins, we have a high risk for heart disease. And I started to see some of the research that was coming out because when we look at what happens when a woman goes into menopause, at the end of perimenopause, into menopause, women skyrocket for a bunch of chronic health issues.
Yeah.
And heart disease is one of them. And we have heart disease that runs in our family. And I thought, wow, I wonder if I could just try it to see if it would lower my cardiac disease risk. I mean, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of women. And I feel like that we don't really talk about that very often.
Exactly. It's so crazy because I feel like, you know, again, there's a lot of symptoms, but cancer, breast cancer, there's a lot of diseases that affect women, autoimmune conditions,
Mhm.
but the number one killer of women is cardiovascular disease.
Yes.
And we do not talk about what we can be doing to prevent cardiovascular disease. We
I have
just
a
don't,
great
as a society.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I was not happy with the answers I was given when I went to my doctor and I said, hey, I'm high risk. What can I do? So I started to see the research coming out and I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go on a GLP-1 in a microdose and see what happens. What it turned out was that it helped with all of the other issues I was having, my perimenopausal symptoms, namely how my brain was working. So when I went
Yeah.
to my gynecologist, I said, my brain fog is so debilitating right now. I'm not sure why. What is it about perimenopause that's causing this? And I'm high risk for cardiovascular disease. I just went as a normal person to my healthcare team and said, I'm motivated, I'm educated, what can I do? And it turned out that GLP, from my perspective, are going to be the next big conversation. Women are going to start asking of their doctors. I started asking mine. Everybody gave me their blessing to go on a GLP medication, which I thought was amazing. The
That
conversations I
is
had,
amazing.
they
It
were
really
like, you
is.
know what? The studies are fantastic. If you're working with somebody who's walking you through it, great. Yes, great, fantastic.
So I'm just curious. So you got their blessing, but
Yeah.
none of them were. Did any of them actually prescribe it for you, or was it more like, we don't really know a lot about it. We know that there's studies. Go for it, but I don't want to be involved. Is
Exactly.
that kind of what it was? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that makes
So,
sense.
like Suburban Warrior podcast name, I was a little bit of a warrior myself
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
going to
Good for you.
actually use myself as a little bit of an experiment to see what I can do with my own labs.
Yeah.
Across the board, within 3 months on a small dose, and this is just for me, so everybody needs to talk to their healthcare team. But my blood pressure went down farther than anything else I had been doing. And mind you, I exercise multiple
Right.
days a week. I'm a nutritionist for a living. I was like the typical, I'm doing all of the things. I
Of
was on
course.
hormone replacement therapy,
Yep.
and the information I was given was we can put you on statins,
Oh,
and that's about it.
it's a
And so,
killer. It's killer.
right. So I
Oh,
decided to go on it. My blood pressure normalized, my blood lipids normalized, I lost visceral fat. I was tracking myself as I was
right.
going through all of this. But then the craziest thing, Chrissy, is that the things that we don't talk about is that when a woman goes in through perimenopause and menopause, their risk for eating disorders increases a pretty large amount, relapse increases, ADHD increases when a
Yeah.
woman goes into menopause. And so I noticed that my hunger and fullness cues started normalizing, that my satiety felt balanced again. My brain started working again. And so that's the piece where I feel like in the next few years, this is going to be commonplace conversation. You and I are
Yeah.
having this conversation as sort of like the forefront of a tidal wave coming,
Yeah.
which is really exciting to me so that people can start thinking about what they want to ask their doctors for.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. I think that not only the GLP-1s, I think peptides in general are going to become like vitamins are now like that. I don't know how else to describe it, but I think that the supplementation that we do with vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C, a multivitamin. I think peptides are going to become the new vitamins for our health and wellness journeys because they're just starting to show all of this, clinically very relevant data that is really enhancing our lives. And I,
Awesome.
I just see that's the future of where we're headed, and obviously GLP-1 is a peptide. So okay, so talk to me then. Let's start talking about the GLP-1s. Obviously, people know that they are, or what I shouldn't say. Obviously, people know that they're for weight loss.
Mhm.
Really started for they've been around forever for diabetics, just
Right.
not in such a wonderful delivery system, like they've been available in the recent years. And recently, people use them for diabetes, but now it's been used for weight loss. But since they've been around for weight loss, people are finding that they're used for other symptoms. So tell me about that. What are you seeing GLP-1s being used for besides weight loss?
Well, if we were to look at the research, so there's me, you, us talking about what I'm going to do on my own. But when
Yep.
we look at the research, non diabetic use of GLP medications, because really it's a whole health tool now,
Yep.
is we're seeing that it's being used for heart disease. Studies are showing, I mean, I have all my statistics right here.
Love
Studies
it.
are showing that people who take GLPs have 13% less major events for cardiovascular risk after menopause.
Wow.
Dementia, 42 to 50% lower risk, even in non diabetics. Menopause is a major risk window for women. Women live longer than men. Women also have more dementia and Alzheimer's than men. When we think about how we want to live longer lives, better health, we don't want to have dementia and Alzheimer's. And these medications are showing that even in non diabetics, it's lowering the risk. Fatty liver, 70% reversal in fatty liver on a GLP-1 medication, which is amazing because fatty liver is happening to people younger and younger ages.
Yeah.
Modulates and reduces cravings and binging. And studies are being done right now for people with binge eating disorder and alcohol use disorder. So to me, it's a phenomenal look at something with very few side effects is helping move the needle to prevent chronic disease in women as they age. And I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Prevent chronic disease in women as they age, because menopause is sort of like the ball drop of as soon as a woman hits menopause and she loses estrogen. Even women on hormone replacement therapy, the loss of estrogen is really devastating when
Yeah.
we look at women being pushed into the chronic disease state. The loss of estrogen pushes up the rates of ADHD, pushes up the rates of disordered eating and eating disorder relapse as a woman goes into menopause, pushes up the rates of cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, high blood pressure. So to me, I think we owe it to women living long lives, healthier, to have this important conversation and look at research as a whole. It's a really big whole health tool for the heart, for the liver, for the brain, for the kidneys, and then for women, especially when we look at what's important, visceral fat.
Yeah.
Visceral fat is so important as a woman ages. We want to prevent that because it's tied to almost every single chronic disease that a woman is subject to.
Yeah. And when we talk about visceral fat, just for listeners, that is really the fat that we start to develop more of in perimenopause and menopause. And it's kind of contributes to that belly that, like, makes you feel like you're just so bloated, or you actually are just thickening around the waist. But the visceral fat is fat that is literally in our viscera, meaning it's fat that is contained around our organs. And that's why we feel so much more larger and fatter in our abdominal area. And we feel like we just get this belly no matter what we do. We can't exercise it off. We can't starve ourselves to eat to reduce it. But it's truly, again, it's because of estrogen and the fluctuations of our hormones during this time, we start to develop more visceral fat. So I just wanted to clarify sort of what that was for people that were wondering, like, what is visceral fat? What are you talking about? So
Wait, and then I want to one more thing too, is that not everybody can go on hormone replacement therapy. And
right,
when we look at things like how you just said hormones help reduce visceral fat, but if a woman can't go on hormone replacement therapy, she's left with even fewer options. And this is why
absolutely.
this conversation is even more important, because our generation, Chrissy, hormone replacement therapy skipped a generation
Yep.
because of the flawed study. And so we're the first generation to be going on hormone replacement therapy for women who can. Use with microdosing of GLP medications is going to be a big game changer for chronic disease, but GLP is an important conversation for the women who can't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And there's a study that was done showing that when you add a GLP into hormone replacement therapy, weight loss is even more significant, in perimenopause. And I know a lot, I work with a lot of menopause specific providers like OBGYNs who are menopause only for referrals and stuff for clients. And I know that they are all also echoing, like anecdotally, even too, like what they see is adding that little bit of GLP-1 in with hormone replacement therapy, can really help with all of these perimenopausal symptoms. So I think anecdotally we're seeing that as well. But I couldn't agree more about this. It's just such a great conversation for us to be having so that people can really understand what their options are and then again make their own decision, what works for them. So talk to me a little bit about what you see as sort of any negative side effects, because I know in the very beginning and maybe still, we used to talk about, the GLP-1s, like there's all this muscle mass loss and it's so bad for you because you're losing all your muscle. And what are you seeing there when it comes to any negative side effects?
Yeah, any weight loss is going to put you in a position where you're going to lose muscle. And so, like any health program, there are things that we have to consider moving forward. And this is something that women need to consider if they're on a GLP-1 or not, because the loss of estrogen means you lose muscle. And so,
Yeah.
if you're on a GLP-1 going into menopause, it's even more important to keep really focused in on that. So, that's one. Then the studies are still flushing out, but everything that I'm seeing is pancreatitis doesn't really seem to be statistically significant. But that would probably be a question for a researcher. But also, making sure we have bone strength, because bone strength and muscle strength tend to go together so often. Now, alternatively, I think that people who have had eating disorders of anorexia should be incredibly closely monitored on these medications. GLP-1s are showing in studies to be really helpful for anything that is binge eating, but anorexic women, it might be a very you want to very much proceed with caution. And
Yeah.
so for anorexics, that's something that I have seen it not work out so well. I think that's important to say too, because the
Absolutely.
anti-diet community and the intuitive eating community are really upset by the use of GLP-1 medications. But as the research comes out, especially with alcohol use disorder and binge eating, we're going to see it's pretty much going to help with the brain chemicals driving a lot of those behaviors.
Yeah. And what about how it affects mood? What are you seeing there?
Well, it is incredibly effective because it helps with, when we look at metabolic symptoms in women as they age, that really impacts women. And as a woman goes into perimenopause and menopause, they become naturally insulin resistant by just doing nothing, just the loss of estrogen. And that metabolic symptoms really impact brain fog and ADHD. So a lot of people to me say that they have greater day-to-day function and less ADHD symptoms. And I just posted not a TikTok, a YouTube about this, how for me, I wanted to go on ADHD medication because my ADHD symptoms were so bad during perimenopause, but my cardiologist said no because my
Yeah.
blood pressure was so on the edge. Why? Because women's blood pressure naturally goes up as they go into perimenopause. So for me, GLP-1s was the perfect blend of how I could actually lower my blood pressure, not be on a medication that might stimulate it and still get the good benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just going back to, I think you made a really good point about going into menopause and perimenopause. We talk about muscle loss, and anytime you are going to rapidly lose, have rapid weight loss, you're going to lose some muscle. But if it is slower weight loss over time, and if it's managed in like a whole health plan, like you said, your doctor was like, sure, if someone else wants to help manage you and give you GLP-1 and take you on that journey. But it really is about taking the GLP-1 and manage and being on like a health plan and someone helping you manage it, because it's about tracking that muscle loss and that weight loss so that you are working out, you're lifting weights, you're moving your body, you are eating and you're still getting enough calories to maintain.
Exactly.
It's all of these things, right? The health plan. Because the other thing is, I've heard that there's hair loss associated with GLP-1s, and I think a lot of that is calorie deficit and not getting enough protein and not eating enough while you're on the GLP-1s. And again, that's something else I think that can be included as part of a health plan when you're working with someone who can help you manage the whole health plan as opposed to just taking a GLP-1.
We would not want to treat someone's heart disease without a team. We
Yes,
would not want to
exactly.
treat somebody's mental illness without a team.
Yep.
GLP-1 medication usage requires a team.
Yep.
And the hair loss piece, I think, is so important because, if you go on Reddit for even just a hot second on the GLP boards, hair loss is a huge thing. Um,
Yeah.
any kind of shock to the body, whether it
Yeah.
be extreme, profound grief, for example, people
Right.
have hair loss, and losing a rapid amount of weight is considered a shock to the body.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that everybody is getting support.
Yep.
Nutritional support, great advice, good emotional support. That's why I wrote the book that I did, because no one is talking about the emotional support that people on GLP medications really, really need.
Yeah.
So yes, we want good teams guiding, shepherding all of the women's that we're friends with through this with great help so that they become even healthier and more successful, meeting all the goals that they have.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you about your personal journey because,
Mhm.
like you said, you're educated, you trained at Stanford, you are functional medicine clinical nutritionist. You have all of this knowledge about your body and healthcare, and you went to your doctors and you talked to them about it. They gave their blessing. Go for it. But then what did you do? Like, how did you get it? Are you using a compounded version?
Yes. So
Yes.
I went on and used a compounded version and also used all the information I have to track myself. So
Hmm.
this is some of the things we talk about teams. Here's like
Yes.
the top three things that I recommend before any woman goes on a GLP-1 medication. Make sure you have your team in place.
Yep.
Make sure that you get the blessing of your doctor or that they at least understand and know you're on a medication. Number two, get a DEXA scan.
Yeah.
Understand what your muscle mass, your fat mass, and your bone strength is before you even go on a GLP-1 medication. And
Yeah.
then the third thing is understand how your gut is working because GLP-1 medications do impact the gut. And if you, for instance, have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or gastroparesis is an issue when you're on a GLP-1 medication. I find it not to be a very big issue when you're on a smaller dose, but we want to make sure that we set you up for success. And then, of course, doing the mindset work is sort of like the big umbrella as well. Because if you believe that, for instance, you are not lovable, or that your life is set up to punish you, then those belief systems are so deeply rooted that going on a GLP-1 medication, as powerful as they are not going to change those. We have to change them. And so
Yeah.
that's part of the team that I really recommend.
Yeah. I love that. And I also think having on your team someone, whether it is like a physician, a health coach, a nutritionist, whatever it is, that is someone that can help guide you through the process of this journey is huge because you do need someone to sort of be, your partner in it and your source of support while you're going through it. And I say that because I do think there's a lot of resources online. There are a lot of compounding pharmacies, which I'm a huge fan of. And I think compounding pharmacies have such an amazing place in all of healthcare. But I do think you also have to be careful and make sure you're getting it from a reputable compounding pharmacy
Exactly.
that is referred to you from a reputable source.
That's so important
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
yes, well said.
yeah.
It should be the disclaimer. You want for everything
It
you're doing
is.
reputable. Hmm.
Exactly, exactly. Don't just click on a link on Instagram on and just anybody's, profile because they look good and buy from them. Make sure it's all on the up and up. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the emotional aspect of it now because I know you just are recently launching a book called Beyond the Shot,
Yes,
which,
here, I'll
you
show it.
know, yeah, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's so, so nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I read a little bit of it prior because you were kind enough to send me a copy. So thank you. And it is, I think, very interesting. And I think it brings up a lot of topics that we don't think about. So let's talk about some of those right now about sort of what happens once you do go through the journey and realize, you know what, I want to try this. Or whether you're on, one of the prescribed medications because you're looking to really lose a significant amount of weight, or maybe you are microdosing because you want the protective cardiovascular brain, support or brain fog and all of the things we talked about. No matter what, let's talk about, what are some of the things that once you start taking it, you start to see happening.
Well, we want to take inventory. So, anytime somebody votes for themselves and decides, I want to improve my health, and that can be the conversation we're having here. It could
Yeah.
be they get diagnosed with cancer. It could be getting over a death of somebody they love and they decide they're going to, change how they eat and, change habits. Anytime we invest in ourselves and our own healthcare plan, we want to make sure we're going the full distance. We're going all the way and looking at what it is that we believe about ourselves, asking the question, how is the experience I'm having right now assisting me? What's it assisting me with? Is such an important way to sort of unpack this. Because when we're on a GLP-1 medication or we're doing any kind of health plan, almost all of us have had really hard things happen to us in our life.
Yeah.
Horrible, hard things. Some are more traumatic than others, but I think everybody has probably been fired from a job, or they have been unfriended by a friend,
Yeah.
or they maybe had something happen hard financially. Everybody has had hard things happen to them in their life. And when
Yeah.
those things happen, it causes us to believe things about ourselves that aren't necessarily true. And these happen in micro ways. And the reason why I wrote this book is because for people who have struggled with their body, their weight, their identity, maybe feeling like they got passed over for a promotion because of how their body looked, really impacts us. And
Yeah.
when we go on a GLP-1 medication, we're getting such a amazing whole health tool, and looking at the emotional landscape of each person's journey should be part of how we make these tools work for us. It's like,
Yeah.
just, we're going to open up all the chapters. We're going to look at how we eat. We're going to look at how we exercise. We're going to look at how much muscle mass we have. Oh, by the way, we also have to look at, what do we think about ourselves and our life? What do we
Yeah.
think about our own worthiness? And the book is really takes people step by step to look at, what is it that you believe about yourself and your own life, and why, and how to change it through the power of self-compassion and reparenting.
Yeah. And why is it that sort of maybe being on a GLP-1 or part of the journey of being on that, and after you start losing weight and after you start to get maybe a little bit of clarity, like, why is this such an important time to do this work? I mean, I know it's important all the time, but I guess what I'm asking is, are the GLP-1s are sort of opening up this time of clarity in a way
Mm-hmm.
for us, right? To be able to start looking and asking these deeper questions and maybe finding the answers, right?
Well, I think it's a self-guided journey. The reason why, I can tell you for me why.
Okay.
I felt unhappy about my body for my entire life. There was not one day that I actually said, wow, I really like my body.
Yeah.
Why? Because I had had 48 years of experiences where I got feedback from the world that said, you're not good enough. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of other women get that feedback. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go into menopause, and I'm tired of that storyline. I want a
Yeah.
better storyline for myself. And
I love that.
we reach out into the world to try to find the answers to make our storyline better. And those things don't work. It has to be an inside guided journey. And it turns out that our hearts are powerful enough to do it. When we look at the research, self compassion actually can change the belief system that's running us, that most of us don't even know that it's running us. I'll tell you a funny story
Okay.
how I knew this was true. So when I was at Stanford doing my compassion training, I was with some heavy hitters in the world, people who ran universities, people who ran hospital systems, super famous authors, influencers. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. Like, I'm with all these amazing people here at Stanford. And you know what it turned out, Chrissy? The number one thing that I walked away from was, people who are in high level positions still have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
They still believe untrue things about themselves. And if they are at the top of their game, then I have there's no excuse for me not
Yeah.
to do this inner work. And so I saw everybody going through the compassion program, changing their belief system through compassion. And so then it turns out that it can pretty much be applied everywhere we go. In any job, any health situation, anything that happens to us is going to challenge us. And your heart is powerful enough to help you through it and not decide untrue things. And the reason why I love it is because it's really good for your health.
Yeah.
Believing untrue things about yourself, like you're not lovable or life is punishing you, keeps us in a position where we're going to have more chronic disease coming our way.
Yeah. It's, oh my gosh, I love that. And thank you for sharing that story, because I think it is so powerful to understand that these as you're saying that, I was thinking about Taylor Swift, because I love Taylor Swift and I love all of her music. And she just recently released a new album, and you listen to her lyrics and you think, like, all these things, like, she's like top of the world and she's still singing about being hurt, not feeling good enough, people sort of, pulling the wool over her eyes, and doing all these things to her. And, I listen to her music and I actually think that I'm like, wow, like, here she's Taylor Swift, like, and she's still writing these beautiful poetic lyrics about all these things that are happening to her, that are happening to everyday people. So it just goes back to the people that are on the top of their game, still having things happen to them, still thinking negative thoughts about themselves, still believing they're not lovable, and don't have a place in the world.
But people in bodies that have been hard to live in and had bullying or shaming, or maybe they didn't get the job, they have spent an extraordinarily large amount of time trying to put distance between those painful events.
Yeah.
And GLP-1 medications help the food noise go down. You think less about food, you get more distance, which is the perfect time to stop running away from those things or trying to put so much distance and actually turning towards them. Because that's one of the beautiful things about these medications is that your brain works better, your body's working better. Now you have the time and the space to start unpacking some of the hard things that happen to you and touch them with your own deep care. And so it's less about putting distance between them, closing the chapter. I'm done with it. I was bullied as a child and now I'm thin, is the
Yes.
perfect time to put to rest all of those things that happened and infuse them with your own deep care and your own self-compassion, because there's a lot of research now that shows that when we do that, it actually helps us move on and become more confident and have greater resources of resilience. Self-compassion increases emotional resilience, and that is the thing that we need as we age. And that's the thing that helps us move away from deciding that we're not valuable as people when we have lived in a body that we don't like for so many years.
Yeah. So, can you explain a little bit, just go into a little bit more depth about food noise? Because I think that we hear that a lot about GLP-1s.
Mhm.
I think that maybe those who haven't been on it don't fully understand what that means about food noise. Because I do think it's something that everyone has in their head, whether you struggle with weight or not. So can you tell us, like, and I guess I'm asking because I'm wondering if people don't really know what it is until it's not there anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Great
Like,
point.
okay, so can you explain what food noise is, and how would you explain your journey of the food noise going down for you?
So there's no scientific term for food
Right.
noise. And a lot of people are really upset in the scientific community that we're even using that word. But
Yeah.
for all women who have grappled with thinking about food night and day, which is what I call food noise,
Yeah.
it's a real thing.
Right.
There's some, so people who grapple with the disease of obesity, and we look at all of the metabolic symptoms of the disease of obesity, obesity is a neurological issue and it's a physical issue. So dopamine seems to be the big player. Dopamine, when we don't have enough dopamine in the brain, then it is when we think about food, we think about how to make ourselves feel satisfied and satiated. So for me, I didn't realize that I thought about food so much. I thought it was the normal amount because, of course, it's embarrassing to admit I do this for a living. And yet, when I got my health insurance policy about 4 years ago, all of my blood work came back. It was like right after COVID had happened. And so I, like everybody else, saw my doctors less. I got a health insurance policy. It came back and it was like almost pre-diabetic from eating intuitively. I decided to loosen up on, all of my food restrictions and eat more intuitively. But when you eat intuitively and you're at the end of perimenopause, it tends to not work well because you're so insulin resistant. And so that was when I knew that I started thinking about food night and day when I went on my health kick. And I started to do intermittent fasting. It made me think about food more than anything I had done.
Yeah.
When I went on a GLP-1 medication, within the first 2 weeks, I stopped thinking about food and I realized what an issue it is for me, what an issue it is for so many other people as well.
Yeah. Because like what tell us what happened. Like what did you like when you like thoughts just you were able to not think about food and just be a little bit freer, just eat when you wanted to eat, didn't eat as much. Like is that what it was? Like it just wasn't this constant like do this, do that, like
Yes, all of those things. So I stopped waking up thinking about what my food was going to be for the entire day.
okay.
I stopped micromanaging things. Like before we go out to a restaurant, I have to look at the menus to make sure that there were foods that I can eat, foods that I liked. I stopped micromanaging how big my portions were. because had started to gain weight in perimenopause and I wanted to prevent even more weight gain from happening. And
Yeah.
so the only way to do that is to go on a lower calorie diet. I personally went on a higher calorie diet when I went on a GLP-1 medication because it worked so effectively for reducing my insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So I just stopped planning. I stopped worrying. Those are the two big things, planning and worrying. And I don't know if obsessing would be the right word, but actually, my husband was one of the people who mentioned it. And he said, I just don't hear you talk about being worried about how, when, and why, and where you're going to eat. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, so you lost weight on the GLP-1, but I'm wondering also, do you feel like you lost inflammation as well?
Yes, all my inflammation markers went down. And I
Okay.
see that consistently in my client population as well because I run blood or have my clients run blood panels on themselves looking at their inflammation markers.
Yeah.
And just last week, I had a client who had a C-reactive protein, that global inflammation marker went from
Yeah.
a 5 to a point 0.5. She went
Wow.
elevated inflammation down and also on less supplements, eating
Yeah.
more foods.
Right.
So I just
Yeah.
see it pretty fantastic.
That's what sparked the question for me because you said, now you're eating a higher calorie diet, but, saw everything go down. And I was wondering, if part of that was inflammation because you do hear that GLP-1s help with inflammatory markers as well.
Well, there's now studies that have come out that it actually reduces cytokines
Yeah.
and interleukin. So a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of the interleukins and cytokines that are related to chronic inflammation and autoimmune diseases are being shown over time to be reduced by GLP-1 medications because inflammation is such a systemic driver of autoimmune disease,
Yeah.
and these medications so effectively reduce that level of inflammation. Then we start to see the side effect of that is that the cytokines go down. And that's sort of, the things that we're interested in measuring, the interleukins for chronic inflammatory diseases like autoimmune disease.
Yeah. So do you think that the GLP-1s, like the next level of maybe where their research might be for autoimmune diseases?
100%.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's really,
which is so, I mean, I feel like almost every woman I talk to in mid-age, meanwhile, maybe it's just the women I'm talking to, I don't know, but like have some type of autoimmune condition.
yes. But what is really interesting that this question I get asked a lot is, are we GLP-1 deficient as a
Yeah.
society as a whole? Start looking at where GLP-1s are manufactured and how important they are for gut and
Yeah.
what's happening to our guts as a society. So jury's still out, but one thing I think everybody can agree on right now in this polarized society that we live in is that the quality of our environment and the quality of the food has gone down over time. And the
Yes.
more ultra processed foods and less fiber you get, the less GLP-1s you're going to produce in your gut.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's like we take vitamins and
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like the chicken or the egg thing, right? It's, do we stumble upon this for weight loss because of the diabetic population, but now we're finding all of these other benefits? And are we just realizing that it might be a deficiency in the population because of how we live in our modern society? And
I'm
who
seeing
knows?
that more and more.
You're seeing that more and more. And then, okay, so then I'd like to talk a little bit more about the emotional effects that
Yeah.
you're seeing, beyond the shot. And once people are on the GLP-1, not just for you personally, but for your clients, they're having this weight loss. Now they're able to start addressing, self-compassion, addressing mood and emotional. What are you seeing with your clients? Like what is sort of like the revelation that is coming from all of this?
They're able to really understand the roots of their emotional eating
Okay.
because
Yeah.
they get space and quiet and they can sort through things. Like,
Yeah.
oh, when that breakup happened or that relationship ended, or I moved to a city and I didn't know anybody and I was lonely. Oh, wow, that was emotional eating.
Yeah.
And they really can separate it out and then see that, oh, when I build up emotional resilience in other areas of my life, then I don't have those roots of emotional eating are cured and healed.
Yeah. Do you think that deep down we're all emotional eaters in a way? I mean, like either emotional eaters or using food to help with our emotions. So whether we're
Yeah.
depriving ourselves of food because of our emotions, or we're eating because of our emotions, like one or the other. Do you think that we all sort of do that in a way?
Yeah, it's two things. Food helps buffer pain, emotional pain,
Yeah.
and that's good news,
Yeah.
and that's bad news.
Right. Right.
So it's good news because we have a tool that can help us buffer against emotional pain, which can be overwhelming. So, but does that work long term? No, it's hard. But then the other piece of that is that then we can really take that apart and use ourselves and build the confidence and the resilience inside of ourselves to help with the emotional pain from something. So thank God we have food to help
Yeah.
us get
Yeah.
through dark nights. And also, if we let it, if we choose the path of vulnerability and compassion, then we can trust ourselves to do the job that food has been doing. And I think that is the number one gift of doing inner work while you're on a GLP-1 medication, because there are going to be unknowns if you're on a GLP-1 medication. Is the
Yeah.
insurance going to stop covering it?
Right.
Will I stop responding to it? Will I reach a plateau and I'm suddenly not responding to it anymore? You know,
Yeah.
will I have to go off of it because my doctor told me to because I have surgery coming up? There are things that are going to happen that are going to be unique to GLP-1 medication users, and it is going to help you break free from the patterning if you use that time wisely. That you're feeling great, your brain's working better, your inflammation is lower. Now's the best time to dig in and start
Yeah.
unpacking some of the things that have happened to you and use your own kindness to turn towards it and not judge yourself, because emotional eating causes a tremendous amount of judgment, and it's time to let that go. And you can learn how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's I just had a conversation that involved exactly what you were describing, like this panic with, she's on a GLP-1, all of a sudden insurance isn't covering it.
Mhm.
There's panic setting in. What am I going to do? I feel so good, and I don't want to be off of it. And what am I going to do? And and I was like, okay, calm down. We got this. Here are some resources, and we're going to figure it out, and it's all good. But like honestly, being in that conversation and seeing her in that panic, I felt for her, because no, you don't want to see anyone feel that way about, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because not only because it wasn't a weight loss thing, it was more of like my brain. Like I'm thinking, I feel clear, I feel good on it. I don't want to go back to not feeling good, And so I think there's so much of that emotional work that goes into, okay, so now that I'm feeling good, who am I on this? And what does it look like? What does this journey look like for me? Do I want to stay on it? And maybe I'm at my ideal weight now. Should I start going down in a dose? Do I see how I feel? It's just, again, it's just such a journey that is so bio individual for each person,
Yeah.
but it involves so much of, I think, an inner reflection of where am I? Where do I want to be? What does this look like for me?
In each of the chapters of my book, I put in a story of a client who went through their own struggle. I call it the
Yeah.
struggle story. So we have to write the struggle story before we write the success story. We have to
Yep.
understand what it is that we believe and why, and how that belief system, as limiting as it is, has helped us get through really hard times, so that we can look at it, examine it, and say, oh, I'm ready to let go of that. And so I take the reader through different versions, like you had your client,
Yeah.
who's really scared about that, to help people understand how everybody's journey is unique, and how
Yeah.
when we look at self-compassion, it's so effective at helping heal judgment towards ourselves because we're so hard on ourselves as humans.
Yeah. And as women,
As women,
right? I mean, as
worse
women,
than
we are
almost
real
anything.
hard on ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And so a lot of people don't even understand that the belief system that they have of unworthiness started out as a root, and it planted itself, and now it branches out into every area of their life, and they don't know how to change belief systems. And
Yeah.
it turns out that we can, and it's sort of like a step-by-step process.
Yeah. I love that.
But as women age and they get more real, I think, and they have all the years of wisdom built up, they're ready. They're ready to do this kind of deeper work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jessica, tell us, where can my listeners find Beyond the Shot, your new book?
So it's on Amazon, of course, and
Okay,
it's
great.
sold at every retailer. And
Awesome.
also, I did an audiobook. So the audiobook is on Audible and Spotify. So it's if you have,
Awesome.
yep, so you can listen to it there.
Oh, that is so great. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing all of your expertise and experience with us. I think this is just such an important topic. I think we both agree that we are going to see more and more information, more and more research come out, really just guiding us and seeing the benefit of what these GLP-1s and, like I said, I think other peptides can really do for us on our health journey. And I think the important thing is, go read Jessica's book. Look at what you can do to be your own advocate. Look at what you can do. And I think you said it earlier, vote for yourself, right? Like, vote for yourself. I love the way that you put that, because it really is truly what I do every day with my clients. I am just really working to get everyone to understand their own bodies, be their own advocates, know that they hold the power. Don't let anyone else tell you what will and won't work, and just keep asking questions until, you're thriving and you're feeling better. And be confident enough in your own inner knowing to take action. And part of that action may be going on a GLP-1.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. I love it. Well, thank you so yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really loved our conversation. And guys, we would love to hear what you think of the conversation as well. So be sure to drop us a review or leave us a comment. And, we'll be back next week with another amazing suburban warrior here to share her story with you. Until next week, bye guys.